We are back. It is day 3 of our carbohydrate series. If you've missed day 1 or day 2, they are on my YouTube channel. And day 1, we talked about the impact of sunlight. And it's not a small impact. It's actually really significant as some prescription drugs on the market, potentially more. And then on day 2, we talked about sleep. The impact that even one night of moderate sleep deprivation can have on your carbohydrate tolerance, the way that you metabolize carbs. Now, it impacts the way you metabolize everything, but it disproportionately impacts carbohydrate metabolism. And that doesn't mean that you're screwed if you're in a season like me where sleep isn't necessarily optimal. I have 3 young kids, and so most nights I wake up here or there. Check out part 1, check out part 2. Today, we are going to be talking about timing. So we haven't talked about food yet, and today we are. We are going to be talking about the timing of carbohydrates and why that matters. But first, I want to say this very, very clearly. What you eat matters more than when you eat. But that does not mean that when you eat doesn't matter. It does. But let's not lose the big picture. What you eat matters most. I don't want anybody getting lost in nuance and specific strategy and miss the big picture that what we eat is a huge driver of our energy and our cravings and our metabolism and our overall experience with fat loss. When you eat matters less, but it does matter. And we are talking about it today. Your breakfast carbohydrates might be limiting your ability to burn fat or negatively impacting your energy, your blood sugar, your cravings, the return of your hunger more than you think. I grew up in a house where we had carbs for breakfast. That was kind of all we had my entire life growing up. It was cereal, or it was bagels, or it was English muffins, or it was regular muffins, but those were our breakfast options. It was fresh fruit. All of those things are carbohydrates. And for the longest time, I really believed that I was metabolically broken because I would have a big bowl of cereal and I'd be hungry 30 minutes later as though I never even ate anything. In fact, sometimes I would be more hungry after having something like a bowl of cereal or an English muffin than I would be if I hadn't eaten at all. And that made no sense to me until I began to understand the way that carbohydrates in the morning can set us up for how we feel the rest of the day. You might have heard before, hey, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, and you want to have your carbs in the morning because then you have all day long to burn them off. Yeah, the body doesn't really work like that. It sounds logical, but the body isn't this like time machine where burning starts in the morning and it goes all day long and then it shuts off and restarts the next day. That's not how our bodies work. So, especially if you are somebody who's dealing with the perception of carbohydrate sensitivity, or you're somebody who's dealing with insulin resistance or mid-morning energy slumps, or if you're somebody who has suboptimal sleep, you might not want to have those carbohydrates in the morning. And I'm talking about everything from the bagel to the sugary latte to even the bowl of fruit. All right. Now, here's why. Here's what is uniquely happening in the morning. And we talked about this a little bit in day 2 when we were talking about sleep. Your cortisol levels are naturally elevated in the morning in the dramatic majority of people. There are some exceptions where there are hormonal imbalances and your cortisol rhythm is almost flipped, but we're talking about, for the dramatic majority, the way our bodies are programmed to work. Our cortisol levels, cortisol is one of our stress hormones. It is naturally higher in the morning as part of our normal sleep-wake rhythm. That's part of what gets us up and going in the morning. That's not a bad thing. That is a component of a healthy, optimal circadian rhythm, sleep-wake cycle. However, we can think of cortisol and insulin being the hormone that is very involved with managing our blood sugar and the storage and utilization of carbohydrates that we consume from food. Cortisol and insulin don't really go so well together. If insulin is elevated, we are better off having that be the situation when cortisol is low, not when cortisol is high. the elevation of cortisol makes it more likely that insulin is going to lean more towards fat storage. Okay, insulin and cortisol, we don't want them to be elevated at the same time, so that is a natural indicator that we want our blood sugar levels and our insulin to be lower in the morning, because that is when cortisol is naturally higher. Cortisol basically makes you more insulin resistant temporarily. Okay, that is not if we are chronically stressed, we're screwed, or if we have this normal sleep wake rhythm and cortisol is higher, then we're insulin resistant to our detriment. It's just what happens temporarily when cortisol is higher. And for that reason, having the big bowl of oatmeal or the bagel with the fruit in the morning is suboptimal. Again, if you're somebody whose goal is fat loss, if you're somebody who has some hormonal imbalances, if you're somebody who has impaired sleep. That does not mean carbs are bad. It does not mean we need to be on a ketogenic protocol or avoid carbs altogether. It just means that the best time is not first thing in the morning, when your body is less equipped to handle it than it usually is later in the day. What we'll see is, even if we're eating the same thing in the morning that we're having later, most people will have a greater blood sugar increase to that meal in the morning than they would later in the day. Plus, we tend to be more active as the day goes on. And so that really facilitates carbohydrate responsiveness or absorption and utilization, insulin sensitivity. So when we have these carbs in the morning, when cortisol is higher, we are more likely to have significant peaks and valleys of blood sugar. And what we experience with that, what we feel, is these energy crashes where like 10 o'clock comes around in the morning and you're feeling like you need a nap, or you're needing another coffee because you're just dragging, or you have breakfast and you feel significantly more hungry just an hour or two later. But also, this has an impact on cravings throughout the day. I know for me, I've proven this time and time again. If I were to have pancakes for breakfast, or if I were to have a bagel for breakfast, I am going to have more cravings throughout the day than if I were to start that day with bacon and eggs, or Greek yogurt, or protein smoothie, or something like that. All right, let's talk for a couple minutes about the science here. Chronobiology International shows that insulin sensitivity fluctuates throughout the day. So your insulin sensitivity is not just always the same. We don't wake up with the same responsiveness to insulin that we have at 4 in the afternoon or at 8 in the evening. So for most people, your insulin sensitivity is actually higher in the afternoon or the early evening. So we're not talking about the optimal being pounding bagels at 9 o'clock at night, not at all. But our insulin sensitivity is actually, for most people, going to be higher in the afternoon and early evening, but not first thing in the morning, and also not right before bed. There are other studies that look at the same exact meal, higher in carbohydrates, eaten in the morning compared to later in the afternoon, and we tend to see a greater blood sugar spike in the morning and more hunger after that meal than we see later in the day. Now, if you're somebody who has a continuous glucose monitor or even a glucometer where you prick your finger, you can test this for yourself. I love to do this kind of stuff, and if you're not into it, that's cool. You can just rely on the data, but I love to say, hey, if I were to have a bowl of fruit, bowl of blueberries at 8 in the morning compared to the same bowl of blueberries at 2 in the afternoon, what's the difference? What's the difference in how my blood sugar increases off baseline and how quickly it returns to baseline at those two different times? So you can test this for yourself if you're skeptical or you're unsure. Everybody's different, so it's actually really valuable to have this data for yourself. Or you can just operate with sort of the, this is what is best for most people. But just know that that personalized data is always available to you, either with a continuous glucose monitor or a glucometer, or you can just pay attention to things like, hey, how's my energy when I have an omelet for breakfast compared to when I have a bagel for breakfast, and note those differences in energy and hunger and cravings and focus and those types of things. So what do we do? If you're somebody who's like, oh, I always have oatmeal, or I always have an English muffin with peanut butter, and I thought that was great because the peanut butter gives me protein. Side note, I like to think of peanut butter and things like it as fat that has a little bit of protein, as opposed to protein that has a lot of fat. So what do we do instead? If your goal is fat loss, if your goal is blood sugar control, if you want to minimize cravings and keep yourself satisfied for as long as possible, let's look at starting the day with healthy proteins and fats from whole food sources. That's probably nothing new to you. You've heard that before. Things like eggs, avocado, Greek yogurt. I love to put a half a scoop of protein powder in there to get the protein up even more. Or you can do something like chicken sausage or even pork sausage, sauteed vegetables. You are going to likely feel more energized, less hunger, fewer cravings with this, but do not lose the big picture that what you eat is a bigger rock, a bigger needle mover than when you eat. And then if you're thinking like, okay, so what about the rice, the sweet potatoes, the pasta, the bagel, the pancakes, the whatever? Afternoon and early evening, but the very, very, very best time, if you have a fat loss goal or a hormonal optimization goal, or you want to really restore insulin sensitivity, the best time is going to be after a strenuous workout. So not a phone it in, going through the motions workout, but like I just taxed my body and now I'm replenishing my glycogen stores. That is the best time for those starchy carbs or the carbs that are mostly sugar, your fruits, things like that. So if you are somebody who craves carbs in the morning, know that cravings are largely a function of habit. So if you can just commit to this shift for a week to 2 weeks, you will likely notice your cravings start to change. And if you're like, no, I just need my carbs in the morning, make sure that you also have protein and fat. We're not just doing the sugary latte. Maybe we're starting with eggs and having the sugary latte afterwards, or we're doing half of the sugary latte, or we're putting half as much sugar in the sugary latte. We're adding fat, whether that's egg yolk or avocado or Greek yogurt, or we're adding protein. Maybe that's some meat, or it's some smoked salmon, or it's a protein powder. But let's really make sure that we're not just going heavy on the carbs while also being light on protein and light on fat. That really makes a difference. And give it a week or two, and you might find not only that your tastes change, but that how you feel is so much more positive that it is worth it. And know that you can be a human guinea pig and you can test this out either subjectively. How's my energy? How are my cravings? How's my hunger? And also objectively with the data from something like a glucometer where you're doing the finger pricks, or a continuous glucose monitor that gives you that real-time data without pricking your finger. Okay. If you want the cheat sheet, the summary sheet from this little snippet, I will put the link in the description, or you can find me on Instagram at Elizabeth Benton. You can comment Carbo, C-A-R-B-O, and I will send it to you automatically. Totally your choice. We've got 2 more days here. We've got day 4, day 5 coming up, so stay tuned in. And I'm going to do a live follow-up Q&A. I really want to know what questions you have on these topics, what you want more information on. If you have personalization or strategy questions, feel free to message me directly or put it in the comments. I'm going to be doing a live Q&A after we wrap up this 5-day series. So I'd love to hear what you want to know about it. Make sure to check out the description to grab that link to get the free summary sheet. And also, I almost forgot, next week, so if you're listening to this real time, on April 8th and 9th, I'm doing 2 free, really important webinars. I've been working on these for months, some strategies that I really want to teach you around creating sustainable change and kind of how to get out of your own way. Because it's one thing if you know all this stuff, but if you're not executing, if you're not implementing, if you're thinking, oh, this one thing won't hurt, or I'll start tomorrow, it doesn't really matter, you're not going to get very far. So I'm going to drop that link in the description too. You do have to register, but these are totally free. 2 different sessions on back-to-back nights, different topics, okay? So when you register, you're automatically registering for Tuesday and Wednesday, the 8th and the 9th. Different topics, same series. I really want you to be there. I don't think I've been this excited about a series of trainings that I've done in a long time. I also don't think I've put this much time into developing them. So register for them, tell your friends, have them join you. Guys, we're going into Q2 of 2025 already, and I really want to make sure that it's a time that makes a difference, that moves the needle, where we're not just staying in the struggle and hoping that something's going to be different. We're making it different. So grab that link, drop in your name and email. It's totally free, but you do have to register. I want to pack out the room because it's going to be really good and it's not going to be on the podcast. So if you want this training, you're going to have to be there live with me. All right. We'll see you soon for days 4 and 5. If you missed day 1 and 2, go back and check those out. Grab the cheat sheet, sign up for the webinar. I'll talk to you soon.